Alien girl thought he proposed. Human just called her beautiful. She wasn't blinking again. That's how he knew she was upset, or processing, or both. He was just trying to help her calm down, trying to be decent. He said, "You're beautiful, you know that?" She froze, completely. Then slowly, turned to face him, eyes locked. "You propose?" He frowned. "What? You propose union? You request mating before witnesses?" He laughed. "No, I didn't mean it like that. I was just saying a thing, a compliment." "Then you are cruel," she said quietly. He blinked. "What?" "Where I'm from, that word is said once, in private, never undone. You say it, you stay, or you don't say it." His chest tightened. "I didn't know." "You should have." She looked away, not angry, just wounded in a way he couldn't touch. "I was trained to reject flattery, but not from someone who looked at me the way you did." And that broke him a little, because now he did mean it, and now it was too late. Liam watched as Nara turned away from him, her slender fingers gripping the railing so tightly her knuckles paled. The walkway creaked beneath them, metal expanding in the afternoon heat. Below, the massive fuel tanks sat like sleeping giants, their curved surfaces reflecting the harsh sunlight. The refinery complex spread out around them, pipes and structures weaving together in organized chaos. He wanted to reach for her, but his arms felt leaden with regret. The space between them, barely 2 feet, seemed insurmountable now. "I really didn't know," he said again, softer this time, as if volume could somehow lessen the damage. "On Earth, people say it all the time. It's just words." "Words are never just words," Nara replied, her accent thickening with emotion. She still wouldn't look at him. "They carry weight, responsibility, intentions." Liam ran a hand through his sweat-dampened hair. The Proxima B colony had been established for 15 years now, but cultural integration was still an ongoing struggle. Humans working alongside the indigenous Proxians, so similar in appearance, but so profoundly different in ways that mattered, ways that caused moments like this. "I'm sorry," he offered, knowing it was inadequate. "I should have studied your customs more carefully." Now she did turn, her amber eyes meeting his. Those eyes, slightly larger than human, with vertical pupils that expanded in the shade of the walkway's overhang, held no anger, only a profound disappointment that cut worse than rage ever could. "It is not about customs, Liam. It is about understanding. You said the word that, for my people, is sacred, the word that binds, and you said it without meaning." Liam felt the weight of her words pressing down on him. She was right. He'd been careless, thoughtless. 6 months working together on the refinery's environmental systems, and he'd never bothered to learn the deeper cultural nuances of her people. He'd been content with the surface-level knowledge provided in orientation. "What happens now?" he asked, uncertain how to navigate this new terrain between them. Nara's shoulders straightened, her face composing itself into the professional mask he'd seen her wear in difficult meetings. "Now we continue our work. The fuel processing system still needs recalibration. The corporation expects results." She moved past him, her steps deliberate and measured, heading toward the access door at the end of the walkway. Liam remained rooted in place, watching her retreating form, feeling something precious slipping away before he'd even recognized its value. Just as she reached the door, an alarm blared across the complex, 3 short bursts followed by a longer tone. Nara stopped abruptly, her body tensing. Liam recognized the pattern instantly. Environmental alert. Their eyes met across the distance, personal matters temporarily shelved by professional necessity. Whatever had broken between them would have to wait. The refinery called. The monitoring station was chaos when they arrived. Technicians moved urgently between workstations, their voices overlapping in a mixture of languages. The holographic display at the center of the room pulsed red, showing a schematic of the refinery's western quadrant. Commander Chen spotted them immediately, her weathered face grim. "Taylor, Kevnar, about time. Leak in processing chamber 4, hydrogen levels rising." Liam moved toward his station, already pulling up diagnostic protocols. "Source?" "Unknown," Chen replied, her fingers flying across her own console. "Automated systems should have contained it, but something's overriding the safety protocols." Nara took the station beside him, their shoulders almost touching, despite the tension between them. Professional necessity. "The new catalytic filters," she said, her voice crisp and focused. "They were installed yesterday. Perhaps compatibility issues with Proxian materials? Liam nodded, remembering. The molecularly printed components. We flagged potential resonance issues, but engineering cleared them. Chen's expression darkened. Well, something's resonating now. Chamber 4 is approaching critical pressure. If those hydrogen levels reach explosive concentration, she didn't need to finish. Everyone in the room knew what hydrogen explosions could do, especially in a facility processing volatile stellar fuel compounds. The entire Eastern settlement could be at risk. Manual override, Liam suggested, already bringing up the schematics. If we can't trust the automated systems, too dangerous, Chen cut him off. Remote access is compromised too. Someone needs to physically reset the system from inside the processing chamber. Silence fell across the monitoring station. Processing chamber 4 was currently flooding with hydrogen, a potentially explosive environment. Entering would require specialized equipment and training. I'll go, Liam and Nara said simultaneously. Their eyes met, a moment of perfect alignment despite everything that had transpired between them. Chen looked from one to the other, evaluating. Both of you, she decided. Taylor, you know the Earth systems. Kevnar, you understand how they interface with Proxian technology. You've got 15 minutes before we hit critical concentration. As they headed toward the equipment room, the silence between them felt charged with unspoken words. Liam wanted to clear the air before they entered a potentially deadly situation, but Nara moved with single-minded purpose, gathering the specialized breathing apparatus designed for Proxian physiology. Nara, he began, securing his own oxygen mask. About before? Not now, she said, her voice muffled as she adjusted her equipment. Focus on the task. He nodded, accepting her professional boundary. She was right. Again. Personal matters couldn't interfere with what they needed to do. Lives were at stake. They suited up methodically, checking each other's seals with practiced efficiency, a routine they'd performed dozens of times during training. Despite their personal conflict, there was comfort in these familiar patterns, in the trust embedded in these simple actions. Ready? He asked as they prepared to enter the decontamination chamber that would lead to the processing room. Nara met his eyes through their protective visors. Ready. The decontamination sequence initiated, a fine mist surrounding them as sensors scanned for potential reactants. Through the spray, Liam could see Nara's face, composed, focused, but with something like resignation in her eyes. Not fear of the dangerous mission, but something deeper, as if she'd already accepted some profound loss. And with startling clarity, Liam realized what he stood to lose today might be far more than just his life. The chamber door slid open, revealing the processing room beyond. Hydrogen sensors flashed warning red throughout the space. Together, they stepped into danger. Processing chamber 4 hummed with ominous energy. Emergency lights cast a bloody glow across the equipment, throwing strange shadows against the curved walls. Hydrogen indicators pulsed faster as the concentration continued to rise. Central console, Nara said through the comm system in their helmets. We need to reach the manual override. Liam scanned the room, mentally mapping their path through the maze of equipment. Hydrogen concentration highest near the eastern vents. We should approach from the west. They moved carefully, each step deliberate. The chamber had been designed by human engineers, but incorporated Proxian technology in its processing core. Another example of the sometimes uneasy integration between the two peoples. Proximity alert at Junction 7, Liam reported, checking his wrist display. Concentration approaching lower explosive limit. Nara nodded, adjusting her path. Secondary route through maintenance access. They diverted through a narrower corridor, equipment brushing against their protective suits. Liam tried to focus solely on the mission, but his thoughts kept returning to the walkway above the fuel tanks, to the moment everything changed between them. What did you mean? He asked suddenly, unable to contain the question any longer. When you said you were trained to reject flattery, but not from someone who looked at you the way I did. Nara's steps faltered slightly, the only indication his question had affected her. This is not the time, Liam. We're still 6 minutes from the console, he countered, and if something goes wrong, I need to understand. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the rhythmic beeping of their environmental sensors and the distant hiss of escaping hydrogen. My people do not speak carelessly of beauty, she finally said, her voice measured. When we see it, true beauty, not merely pleasant features, we recognize it as sacred, something that resonates with our deepest selves. She paused at a junction, checking readings before continuing. I was trained as all Proxian envoys are, To recognize when humans use such words without meaning. To understand it as cultural difference, not personal significance. But with me, it was different. They reached a sealed door, the final barrier before the central processing core. Nara worked the manual release, her movements precise despite the bulky protective gear. With you, she said, not looking at him as the door slowly opened, I forgot my training. Because when you looked at me before speaking, I saw recognition. I thought you understood what the word would mean to me. I thought you were speaking as a Proxian would speak. The door finished its cycle, revealing the central core beyond, a massive column of interconnected systems where Proxian crystalline technology merged with Earth machinery. The heart of the processing chamber was in chaos, warning lights flashing across every surface. Liam absorbed her words as they moved toward the core. Recognition. That's what she had seen in his eyes. And she wasn't wrong. He had felt something profound in that moment on the walkway, something he hadn't been ready to name. Console access point is on the far side, he said, returning to the mission at hand. Hydrogen levels still rising. They navigated carefully around the core, hyper-aware that a single spark could trigger disaster. The central console came into view, a hybrid interface of touch panels and crystalline neural nodes. I'll need to reset the Proxian integration systems, Nara said, her gloved fingers already moving across the crystalline surface. You handle the Earthside protocols. Liam nodded, taking his position beside her. They worked in tandem, a synchronized dance they'd perfected over months of collaboration. For a moment, the tension between them faded, replaced by the harmony of complementary expertise. Integration systems offline, Nara reported, ready for manual reset. Earth protocols prepared, Liam confirmed. On your mark. Their eyes met briefly through their visors, a moment of perfect trust despite everything. Now, she said. They executed the reset simultaneously, their movements mirrored across the divided console. The core's angry red glow flickered, then stabilized to a cautious amber. Hydrogen venting initiated, Liam confirmed, watching the levels on his display. Concentration decreasing. Relief washed over him, short-lived. A sudden tremor shook the chamber, sending equipment crashing around them. Nara staggered against the console. Pressure buildup in the secondary chambers, she reported, fingers flying across the interface. The reset triggered a cascade failure in the interconnected systems. The floor beneath them groaned ominously. A new alarm joined the cacophony, structural integrity compromise. We need to get out, Liam said, already calculating their fastest escape route. Now! Another violent tremor answered him. Above them, a section of ceiling collapsed, bringing down a tangle of pipes and conduits. Liam lunged forward, shoving Nara clear of the falling debris. Pain exploded across his back as something heavy struck him, driving him to his knees. Liam! Nara's voice reached him through a haze of pain. He tried to stand but found himself pinned, trapped beneath twisted metal. Through his visor, he saw the hydrogen levels rising again, faster this time. Go, he managed, the word tight with pain. Get out while you can. Nara's face appeared above him, her eyes wide behind her visor. No, she said simply, and began to work on freeing him from the debris. Nara's hands moved with desperate efficiency, testing the weight and distribution of the debris trapping Liam. Her breathing came quick and shallow through the comm system, her usual composure fracturing under pressure. My leg, Liam gasped, trying to help despite the pain radiating up his spine. I think it's broken. Do not move, she instructed, her accent thickening with stress. The structure is unstable. Another tremor shook the chamber, smaller than before but no less concerning. Dust and particles danced in the emergency lighting. The hydrogen concentration display on Liam's wrist continued its steady climb toward the danger zone. Nara, listen to me, he said, forcing clarity into his voice. There's no time. You need to get out. Her hands stilled momentarily, then resumed their careful assessment of the debris. I will not leave you. That's not a request, it's an order. He tried to make his voice firm, authoritative. As senior environmental systems engineer, we are the same rank, she cut him off, a flash of something like anger in her eyes. And my people do not abandon their... She hesitated, searching for the right word. Their colleagues. She found leverage against a twisted support beam, bracing her body in a way that utilized Proxian anatomical differences. The slightly denser muscle structure, the more flexible spine. The beam shifted slightly. I'm going to need your help, she said, all business again. When I lift, you must pull yourself free. Immediately. I cannot hold it long. Liam nodded, gathering his strength. Despite the pain, he positioned himself as best he could, preparing to move. On three, Nara said. 1, 2, 3. She heaved upward, her body trembling with the effort. The debris lifted just enough. Liam dragged himself forward, teeth clenched against the agony radiating from his leg. For a terrible moment, he thought he'd miscalculated, that he'd remain trapped. Then suddenly he was free, collapsing onto the chamber floor as Nara released the beam. She was at his side instantly, her gloved hands quickly assessing his injuries. "Can you stand?" "With help," he grunted. She positioned herself under his arm, taking his weight as they struggled to a standing position. Pain shot through Liam's leg, but the emergency exit beckoned, tantalizingly close, yet impossibly far across the destabilizing chamber. Step by step, Nara encouraged, supporting him as they began their halting journey. The chamber protested around them, groaning like a living thing in pain. Something ruptured overhead, releasing a hissing spray of fluid that pattered against their protective suits. Fuel composite, Nara identified, her voice tight, highly reactive with hydrogen. The implications didn't need explanation. If the hydrogen concentration reached critical levels, the spraying fuel would turn the entire chamber into an inferno. They moved faster, Liam hobbling alongside Nara, each step a lesson in agony. The exit seemed to recede before them, a cruel illusion. Behind them, alarms screamed as systems continued to fail. "Leave me," Liam gasped, feeling her struggling under his weight. "Save yourself." Nara's arm tightened around his waist. "Stop asking me to abandon you," she said, her voice surprisingly fierce. "It insults us both." Another tremor, more violent than the last. A support column crashed down behind them, narrowly missing their retreating forms. The path back to the core was now completely blocked. "Almost there," Nara encouraged. "Keep moving." The exit door loomed before them finally, an airlock separating the processing chamber from the safety of the outer facility. Nara punched the emergency access code, her fingers trembling slightly. Nothing happened. She tried again, more deliberately this time. The panel remained dark, unresponsive. "Power to the door is cut," Liam realized aloud. "Secondary systems should have activated." "Unless they were compromised too," Nara finished his thought. They stared at the sealed door, the finality of their situation settling over them like a shroud. Behind them, the chamber continued its gradual collapse. The hydrogen concentration crept inexorably toward explosive levels. "Manual override," Liam suggested, pointing to a covered panel beside the door. "But it requires 2 people, 1 on each side." Understanding dawned in Nara's eyes. Someone would have to stay behind to complete the sequence from inside the chamber. "I'll do it," they said in unison. Their eyes met through their visors, a silent battle of wills. The chamber shuddered around them, emphasizing the urgency of their decision. "You're injured," Nara said first. "You cannot move quickly enough to have any chance of survival afterward." "Which is exactly why it should be me," Liam countered. "You still have a chance to get clear once the door opens." Nara's expression shifted to something he couldn't quite read. "There is another way," she said carefully. "A Proxian technique, but it requires connection." "What kind of connection?" "Neural synchronization. My people can establish temporary mental links in emergencies. It would allow us to operate both sides of the override simultaneously." Liam hesitated only briefly. "Will it work between human and Proxian?" "It is theoretically possible. We share compatible neural structures, but it means I would see your thoughts, and you, mine." The chamber gave another violent shudder. A decision had to be made. "Do it," Liam said. Nara reached up, releasing the seal on her helmet. Before Liam could protest, she had removed it entirely, exposing herself to the chamber's increasingly toxic atmosphere. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "The connection requires direct contact," she explained, her voice now unfiltered by the comm system. "Remove your helmet." "The air." "We have approximately 90 seconds before the concentrations become dangerous," she said with clinical precision. "The connection takes only moments to establish." Reluctantly, Liam released his own helmet seal. The chamber's air hit him immediately, hot, acrid, tasting of chemicals and danger. Nara moved closer, her face inches from his own. "Be still," she instructed. "Open your mind." Her hands came up to frame his face, fingers positioning precisely along his temples and jaw. Her touch was cool, authoritative. Liam forced himself to relax, to trust. Nara's eyes, those remarkable amber eyes with their vertical pupils, locked onto his. She whispered something in her native language, words he couldn't understand, but somehow felt resonating in his chest. And then there was light. The world dissolved into golden light. Liam felt himself coming apart, molecules separating, thoughts untethering, only to be reconstructed into something more expansive, more connected. Nara. He didn't speak the word, but felt it ripple through their shared consciousness. I am here. Her mental voice was different, richer, layered with harmonics his human ears had never detected in her physical speech. We are synchronized. The connection was unlike anything Liam had experienced. Not mind-reading, not quite telepathy, but a profound alignment, as if their brains were completing each other's neural patterns. He could sense Nara's presence, distinctive yet intertwined with his own awareness. Focus, she guided. The door. Reality reasserted itself. They were still in the failing chamber, hydrogen levels climbing, time running out. But now they moved with perfect coordination, Nara positioning at the manual override panel while Liam, supported by strength that wasn't entirely his own, limped to the secondary console across the chamber. Ready, he communicated, fingers hovering over the emergency sequence. Initiate on my count, she responded. 3, 2, 1. They entered their codes simultaneously, each anticipating the other's movements with impossible precision. The override sequence activated, mechanics grinding as the emergency systems engaged. The airlock door began its ponderous opening cycle. But something was wrong. Liam could feel it through their connection. Nara's sudden alarm, the spike of adrenaline not his own. The door is too slow, she realized, hydrogen concentration approaching critical. Liam scanned the chamber through their shared perception, multiple systems failing simultaneously, the fuel spray intensifying, sparks beginning to arc from damaged electrical systems. We need more time, he thought. Nara's response came with crystalline clarity. Then we make more time. Through their connection, he understood her plan instantly, and its terrible cost. No, it is the only way, her thoughts came back, serene despite the danger. I can reroute the remaining power to stabilize the concentration temporarily, but only from the main console. The main console, now behind a wall of collapsed debris, unreachable except through a narrow gap. A gap only Nara's smaller frame could navigate. I'll go, Liam insisted, already knowing it was impossible with his injured leg. You know you cannot. Her mental voice was gentle but firm. The neural connection will hold long enough for you to escape once the door opens fully. And you? A pause, weighted with truth. The connection goes both ways, Liam. You know the answer. He did. Through their shared consciousness, he understood the calculations she'd already made. The rerouting would buy enough time for one person to escape. Not two, never two. I won't leave you, he insisted, echoing her earlier words. You must. Her thoughts carried a surety that brooked no argument. My people believe that when we save another, we continue through them. Through you, I will exist. The connection between them deepened, barriers dissolving. In that moment, Liam saw Nara completely, her childhood on Proxima B, the rigorous training to become an envoy to humans, her initial distrust of Earth colonists, and then meeting him, working alongside him, the gradual shift from professional respect to something much more profound, and he realized with stunning clarity what she had seen in his eyes on the walkway. You did mean it, her thoughts whispered through him, even if you didn't know. Nara, please. The door's opening, she interrupted. You must be ready. The airlock had indeed cycled further, the gap now wide enough for a person to squeeze through. Safety beckoned beyond, and separation. I'll find another way, Liam insisted, desperately searching for alternatives through their shared consciousness. There is no other way. Her mental voice was calm now, touched with a strange joy. But there is this. The connection between them suddenly deepened, intensified. No longer just synchronized thinking, but something more intimate. Nara opened herself completely, sharing not just thoughts but feelings, letting him experience exactly what she felt toward him. The respect that had grown into admiration. The admiration that had blossomed into something she had no English word for. Only the Proxian concept that humans clumsily translated as recognition of kindred soul. The emotion overwhelmed him, more powerful than any human conception of love, more binding, more certain. This is what I saw in your eyes, she told him. This is what your words awakened, and this is why I must ensure you survive. She was moving away from him now, physically and mentally. The connection stretched between them, thinning but not breaking. Through her eyes, he saw her navigating the narrow gap in the debris, moving toward the main console with single-minded purpose. The door will be fully open in 15 seconds, she communicated. You must be ready to move. Nara. Remember this feeling, she interrupted. Remember what passes between us now. That is all I ask. She reached the console, her fingers flying across the interface with desperate speed. Through their connection, Liam could feel her fighting against time, against physics itself. The hydrogen levels plateaued, just barely below critical. Now, Liam, her mental voice became urgent. Go! The door had opened fully. Safety waited beyond. His body moved seemingly of its own accord, pulled by Nara's desperate will combined with his survival instinct. He stumbled through the airlock, each step an agony of both body and spirit. As he crossed the threshold, he felt the connection between them stretching impossibly thin. Not breaking, not yet, but fading like a dream upon waking. Nara, he called through the diminishing link. What you showed me, I feel it too. I just didn't have a name for it. Her response came faintly, wrapped in a peculiar peace. Now you do. The door began to close behind him, emergency protocols engaging. The last glimpse he had was of the chamber beyond. And through their fading connection, Nara's acceptance as she continued working at the console, buying him seconds with her remaining life. Then the connection snapped, and Liam was alone. The world came back in fragments, hands pulling him away from the sealed door, voices shouting medical jargon, the distant wail of alarms, pain radiating from his leg in persistent waves. Taylor, can you hear me? Commander Chen's face swam into focus above him. What happened in there? Where's Kevnar? The question hit him like a physical blow. Liam tried to form words, but his throat closed around them. The absence in his mind where Nara's presence had been moments before felt raw, ragged, an amputation of consciousness. Still inside, he finally managed. She's still inside. Chen's expression tightened. Rescue team, prepare for emergency extraction. No! Liam grabbed her arm. You can't open that door. Hydrogen concentration near critical. Fuel leak. She's keeping it stable. Buying time. Understanding dawned in Chen's eyes, followed by the grim calculation of a commander who had lost people before. Who knew when rescue became recovery? Get him to medical, she ordered the team supporting him. Priority treatment. Wait, Liam protested as they began moving him. The chamber, Nara, will monitor from the control room, Chen assured him. If there's any possibility of extraction, her words were swallowed by a sound Liam felt more than heard. A deep, resonant boom that shook the entire facility. The lights flickered. Emergency sirens changed their pitch. Everyone froze, understanding instantly what had happened. Processing chamber 4 had reached critical concentration. The hydrogen had ignited. Liam felt it like a second severing. The absolute certainty that the tenuous connection he'd maintained with Nara, the desperate hope that somehow she might survive, was now extinguished forever. I'm sorry, Taylor, Chen said quietly. The medical team resumed their movement, whisking him toward treatment. Liam let himself be carried, too numb to resist. The pain in his legs seemed distant, inconsequential compared to the hollow ache spreading through his chest. Time blurred. The medical bay, doctors speaking in hushed tones, the cold kiss of painkillers entering his system. Through it all, Liam remained caught between two realities, the physical world around him and the echoing memory of Nara's consciousness touching his own. Remember this feeling. That is all I ask. Her final request repeated in his mind, a loop of remembered connection. And he did remember, with a clarity that transcended mere memory. He could still feel the texture of her thoughts, the complex layers of her emotions, the profound recognition she had shown him in those final moments. Fractured tibia, he heard a doctor saying somewhere above him. Minor spinal contusion, respiratory irritation from chamber exposure. He's lucky to be alive. Lucky, the word landed like ash on his tongue. Luck had nothing to do with his survival, only Nara's choice, her sacrifice. Hours passed in medical suspension. His leg was set, treatments administered, questions asked that he answered mechanically, his mind elsewhere. When they finally left him alone in the quiet of a recovery room, the reality he'd been holding at bay crashed over him in a suffocating wave. Nara was gone. The woman who had worked beside him for 6 months, who had challenged his assumptions and expanded his thinking, who had shown him a definition of beauty so profound it transcended physical form, who had, in her final moments, shared with him a connection deeper than anything in human experience. Gone because she had chosen his life over her own. Grief rose in him like a physical force, threatening to tear him apart from the inside. But something else rose with it, something left behind in the neural synchronization, an understanding that went beyond human conception of loss and separation. My people believe that when we save another, we continue through them. Her words echoed with new meaning. She had given him more than just physical survival. In those moments of connection, something of Nara had transferred to him. Neural patterns, memories, perspectives that weren't his own, but now resided within him. Not a complete transfer, not a continuation of her consciousness, but something, a trace, a gift. Liam closed his eyes, focusing inward, searching for that residual presence. For a moment he felt nothing but his own pain, his own grief. Then faintly, like a distant echo, something responded, a pattern of thought not quite his own, a way of seeing that felt familiar yet foreign. His eyes snapped open. Was it real or just his desperate imagination constructing what he wanted to find? There was no way to be certain. No one on the colony had experienced human Proxian neural synchronization before. No precedent to follow. A soft knock interrupted his spiraling thoughts. The door slid open to reveal Commander Chen, her expression somber. "Taylor," she acknowledged. "The doctors say you're stabilized." "Any word on—" He couldn't finish the question. Chen shook her head. "The chamber was completely destroyed in the explosion. Recovery teams are still assessing the damage. But—" She left the implication hanging. Liam nodded, swallowing hard. "There's something else," Chen continued after a moment. "Something unusual in the data feed just before the explosion." Liam looked up sharply. "What kind of unusual?" "A transmission burst, directed to the colony's main data core. Origin point was the primary console in Chamber 4. "Nara," he breathed. "She sent something out before—" "Yes," Chen confirmed. "And it's addressed to you." She hesitated. "It's in Proxian neural code, not something our systems can easily interpret." Hope flared in Liam's chest, wild, unreasonable hope. "I need to see it." "You need to rest." "Please," he interrupted. "I need to see what she sent." Chen studied him, calculation and compassion warring in her expression. Finally, she nodded. "I'll have it transferred to your medical console. But Taylor, manage your expectations. It's probably just technical data from the chamber. Final readings." But Liam knew differently. Even as Chen departed, even before seeing the transmission, he knew what Nara had done in her final moments. Why she had seemed so at peace. She had sent him a piece of herself, a more permanent version of what they had briefly shared, a way to continue. 3 days passed before the doctors deemed Liam stable enough for discharge. 3 days of physical healing while his mind remained caught between grief and desperate hope. The transmission data sat untouched in his personal queue, not because he didn't yearn to access it, but because the medical bay lacked the specialized interface needed for Proxian neural coding. He left medical with a stabilizing brace on his leg and instructions for rehabilitation that he barely registered. The refinery complex had partially resumed operations, the damage contained to the western quadrant. Life continuing despite the loss, as it always did. His quarters felt smaller than he remembered, the air stale from disuse. Liam moved through the space slowly, cataloging the small evidences of his life before the accident. Before Nara, technical manuals stacked beside his bed, a half-finished cup of coffee, now growing interesting cultures, a jacket thrown carelessly over a chair, mundane details of a life that no longer felt like his own. He activated his personal workstation, the holographic display illuminating his face in soft blue light. The notification blinked insistently. One saved transmission, priority status, security locked to his personal biometrics. Liam hesitated, his finger hovering over the acceptance protocol. What if Chen was right? What if it was just technical data, final readings from a failing system? What if his hope was nothing but delusion born of trauma and grief? "Remember this feeling. That is all I ask." Her words gave him courage. He initiated the acceptance sequence, pressing his palm against the biometric scanner. The transmission unfolded into his system, a complex weave of Proxian neural coding that appeared as intricate patterns across his display, incomprehensible to human interpretation. Liam stared at the shifting patterns, frustration building. He needed a Proxian neural interface, technology not commonly available to human colonists. He could request access through official channels, but that would mean questions, explanations, potential restrictions. Then he remembered the slight weight at the back of his consciousness. the residual patterns left by their synchronization. Not enough for true understanding, but perhaps he focused on the display, allowing his vision to unfocus slightly, trying to see the patterns not with his human perception, but with the traces of Proxian awareness that remained within him. At first, nothing changed. The patterns remained indecipherable, alien. Then slowly, something shifted in his perception. Not comprehension exactly, but recognition. The patterns began to resonate with something inside him. Neural pathways reconfigured by his connection with Nara. Words formed in his mind, not heard but felt. For Liam, who looked at me and saw truth. The message expanded in his awareness, unfolding like a flower opening to sunlight. Not merely words but impressions, emotions, memories, all encoded in the complex neural language of Proxians. A language his brain shouldn't be able to process, yet somehow partially did. What passes between us cannot be undone, the message continued. The connection, once formed, echoes. I have little time, but enough for this gift, a fragment of myself, preserved in code. Not consciousness, not continuation, but memory, understanding, the essence of what we shared. Liam's hands trembled as the message flowed through him, each pattern triggering responses in neural pathways, altered by their synchronization. My people have a word that humans have never fully translated. The closest approximation is echo self, the impression one consciousness leaves upon another during deep connection. Even as I work to save you, I am creating an echo self to remain with you. This is not salvation or resurrection. I have accepted my ending. But it is comfort to know that something of me continues in you, that the connection we briefly shared might extend beyond my physical existence. Learn to access these patterns, Liam. They contain what I could not express in your language, what I saw in your eyes on the walkway above the fuel tanks, what you called beauty, but is so much more. The message began to fade, the neural patterns dispersing as they completed their transfer. Liam reached toward the display instinctively, as if he could physically hold on to the connection a little longer. I'm sorry for what was lost between us through misunderstanding, the final patterns conveyed, but I am not sorry for what was found through necessity. Some discoveries come only at the edge of existence. Remember not just how I died, but how I lived, how we connected. That is continuation enough. The message ended, the patterns dissolving into digital silence. Liam sat motionless, tears tracking unnoticed down his face. Grief and wonder intermingled, indistinguishable from each other. Nara was gone. That reality remained unchanged, immutable. Yet something of her lingered, not just in the transmitted neural patterns, but in the changes she had catalyzed within his own mind. The new pathways of understanding that had begun with misunderstanding on a walkway above fuel tanks. He closed the display, decision crystallizing within him. The echo self Nara had created, the neural patterns she had encoded, deserved more than his partial comprehension. They needed to be fully understood, preserved, honored. To do that, he would need help. Not from the human administration, with their caution and protocols, but from those who would understand the profound significance of what Nara had done. He needed to go to the Proxian settlement. Chapter 8. The Journey. The Proxian settlement lay on the eastern edge of the colony, separated from the human structures by a buffer zone of carefully maintained native vegetation. Unlike the utilitarian human buildings with their rigid angles and uniform materials, Proxian architecture followed organic principles, structures growing rather than being built, their crystalline surfaces responding to environmental conditions. Liam stood at the boundary marker, leaning heavily on the walking aid the medical team had provided. His leg throbbed, despite the pain medication, a persistent reminder of all that had happened, all that had been lost. Few humans ventured into the Proxian settlement uninvited. Despite 15 years of cohabitation on the colony, the two species maintained distinct communities, coming together primarily in professional contexts like the refinery. Cultural exchange existed, but was limited, formalized. Nara had been exceptional, an envoy specifically trained to work alongside humans, to bridge the gap between different ways of understanding reality. You need assistance, human? The voice came from behind him, musical in the way all Proxian voices were, but tinged with caution. Liam turned carefully, mindful of his injured leg. A Proxian male stood watching him, taller than Nara had been, with the silvery skin markings that indicated senior status within their community. I'm looking for the neural archivist, Liam said, using the closest English approximation for the Proxian specialists who worked with consciousness patterns. I have something they need to see. The Proxian studied him, vertical pupils contracting slightly in the bright afternoon light. You are the one who survived the refinery accident? The one who worked with Kevnar? Yes, Liam confirmed, a tightness forming in his throat at the sound of her name in Proxian pronunciation, subtly different from how humans said it, with harmonics his ears could barely detect. Word has reached us of her passing, the Proxian said. It brought great sorrow to our community. She was highly regarded. She saved my life, Liam said simply. The Proxian tilted his head slightly, a gesture Liam recognized from his time with Nara, indicating consideration. What business do you have with the neural archivists? They rarely interact with humans? Liam hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. Proxian cultural attitudes toward neural synchronization were complex, sacred, intensely private. What he and Nara had shared in those final moments might be seen as transgressive by more traditional Proxians, but honesty felt like the only path forward. Nara and I connected, he said carefully. During the accident, a neural synchronization. She established it to help us escape. He swallowed hard. Before she died, she transmitted something to me, neural code that I can partially understand but not fully interpret. The Proxian's reaction was immediate and visceral, a ripple of surprise that moved visibly across his silvery skin like wind over water. You claim to have synchronized with Kevnar, a human and Proxian? I don't just claim it, Liam said, a hint of defensiveness creeping into his voice. I experienced it, and I still carry traces of it. It's how I can partially access the neural code she sent. Impossible, the Proxian stated flatly. The physiological differences. I know what happened, Liam interrupted. I'm living with the aftermath, and I need to understand what she sent me, what she preserved. Something in his tone, perhaps the raw emotion beneath the words, gave the Proxian pause. After a long moment of scrutiny, he made a decision. I will take you to Elder Viresh. She is both neural archivist and was mentor to Kevnar. If anyone will help you, it is she. He gestured toward the settlement. But know this, human. If you speak falsely about synchronization, it will be considered a profound disrespect to both our customs and to Kevnar's memory. I understand, Liam said, and I'm not lying. The Proxian nodded once, then turned to lead the way into the settlement. Liam followed, struggling slightly with his injured leg. The paths were different here, not the uniform pavement of the human sector, but living matter that seemed to adjust slightly beneath his feet, compensating for his uneven gait. Proxians paused in their activities as he passed, their large eyes tracking his progress with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. Humans rarely ventured into their community, and never alone. The structure they approached resembled nothing so much as a giant sea anemone rendered in crystal and living tissue. Branching spires that curved gracefully toward the sky. It pulsed with subtle illumination, as if breathing light. The Hall of Patterns, his guide explained as they reached the entrance, home to the neural archivists and our communal memory. Inside, the space defied human architectural logic. Surfaces flowed into each other. Light came from everywhere and nowhere. The air itself felt different, charged with some subtle energy that made the hair on Liam's arm stand up. Proxians moved through the space with purpose, many wearing the distinctive neural interfaces of their culture. Delicate structures that framed their faces, connecting at specific points along temples and jaw. None spoke aloud. They didn't need to. Liam realized they were communicating directly, consciousness to consciousness. His guide led him to a small alcove and gestured for him to wait. I will inform Elder Viresh of your presence. Prepare yourself to be tested, human. She will accept nothing less than absolute truth. Left alone, Liam sank gratefully onto a surface that obligingly formed itself into a seat beneath him. His leg throbbed, but the pain felt distant compared to the nervous anticipation building within him. Would the elder believe him? Would she help him understand Nara's final message? More importantly, was he ready to fully comprehend what Nara had encoded? To accept the responsibility of carrying her echo self? So, a melodic voice interrupted his thoughts. You are the human who claims synchronization with one of our own. Liam looked up to find an elderly Proxian female regarding him with intense scrutiny. Smaller than most of her kind, with skin that had faded to pale silver with age, and eyes so deep in amber they appeared almost gold. The neural interface she wore was more elaborate than others he had seen, with additional connections along her cheekbones. Elder Varesh, he acknowledged, attempting to rise despite his injury. She waved him back down. Save your strength. You will need it if what you claim is true. She settled onto another portion of the responsive surface, which formed itself perfectly to her different physiology. Tell me exactly what happened between you and my former student. Liam recounted the events in processing chamber 4 as precisely as he could. The accident, the trap door, Nara's suggestion of neural synchronization to operate both sides of the override simultaneously. The connection that had formed between them, unlike anything he had experienced before. Her sacrifice to ensure his escape. The transmission she had sent in her final moments. Varesh listened without interruption, her expression unreadable to human perception. When he finished, she remained silent for a long moment, her vertical pupils contracting to thin lines. What you describe is unprecedented, she finally said. Neural synchronization between Proxians and humans has been theorized but never attempted. The physiological differences were considered too great. I know what I experienced, Liam insisted quietly. Yes, she agreed, surprising him. I believe you do. The question is not whether you experienced something, but what precisely occurred between you. True synchronization would have left neural markers, distinctive patterns in your consciousness that would not be present in an unaltered human mind. She called it an echo self, Liam offered. Said it would remain with me after the connection broke. Varesh's eyes widened slightly. She used that specific term? In your language? No, Liam admitted. She said there wasn't an exact human translation. Echo self was as close as it came. Thivarash, Varesh breathed the Proxian word. It is insignificant that she would create such a bond with a human. Unprecedented. Some would say impossible. Can you help me? Liam asked, the question simple but weighted with everything he'd endured. Can you help me understand what she sent me? What she left behind? The elder studied him with those ancient golden eyes. I can attempt to verify whether true synchronization occurred. If it did, interpreting her final transmission may be possible. But understand this, human, such verification requires that I briefly connect with your consciousness. It is not done lightly between Proxians, let alone with other species. I understand, Liam said, and I consent. Varesh's expression softened fractionally. You cannot possibly understand what you are consenting to, but your willingness honors Kevnar's memory. She adjusted her neural interface slightly. Are you prepared to begin now? Liam nodded, his heart racing. Then be still, the elder instructed. Open your mind as you did with Kevnar. Do not resist what comes. She reached forward, her aged fingers positioning themselves precisely as Nara's had done. Along his temples, jaw, the pressure points where human neural pathways ran closest to the surface. Her touch was cooler than Nara's had been, more clinical. Remember her, Varesh instructed softly. Focus on the connection you shared. Liam closed his eyes, summoning the memory of that profound joining, the golden light, the sense of expansion, Nara's consciousness intertwining with his own, the feeling of completeness he had never known he was missing until that moment. Something brushed against his mind, not the immersive connection he'd experienced with Nara, but a lighter touch, evaluating, assessing. Yes, Varesha's voice whispered directly into his thoughts. She is here. Fragments. Echoes. More than should be possible across species. Kevnar's final gift. Images flashed through Liam's mind. Nara as a child, learning the complex neural disciplines of her people. Nara being selected for envoy training, her pride and apprehension. Nara meeting him for the first time, her initial assessment of this strange human with his direct gaze and unconventional approaches. Memories that weren't his own, perspectives he couldn't have known. The connection receded gently, leaving Liam gasping slightly as consciousness fully returned to his body. Varesh withdrew her hands, her expression transformed from skepticism to something like wonder. It is true, she said, her voice carrying a tremor he hadn't heard before. You carry Thivarash of Kevnar, and the neural transmission she sent. It contains more than echoes. It contains her essence, her pattern. What does that mean? Liam asked, still reeling from the brief contact. It means, Liam Taylor, Varesh said, using his full name for the first time, that Kevnar entrusted you with something our people consider more precious than life itself, the continuation of her pattern. The elder rose, decision made, and we will honor her choice by helping you understand it fully. For the first time since the accident, since losing Nara, Liam felt something like hope stirring within him. Not for her return, that impossibility he had already accepted, but for understanding, for continuation of a different kind, for the chance to truly remember, as she had asked. Chapter 9. The integration days blended into weeks as Liam divided his time between rehabilitation for his physical injuries and a very different kind of healing within the Proxian settlement. Elder Viresh had arranged for him to stay in a small dwelling at the community's edge, a living structure that adjusted constantly to accommodate his human needs while gradually introducing him to Proxian sensibilities. The neural archivist worked with him daily, using techniques never before applied to a human subject. Their goal was ambitious, to help him fully access and integrate the neural patterns Nara had transmitted, to bring her echo self into alignment with his consciousness without losing either. It is like learning to hear a specific voice in a crowd, Archivist Kelpour explained during one session, adjusting the modified neural interface they had created for Liam's human physiology. The patterns are present but obscured by the natural activity of your own mind. The interface itself was uncomfortable, designed for Proxian neural structures and only partially adaptable to human anatomy. But Liam endured the discomfort without complaint. Each session brought greater clarity to the fragments of Nara that resided within him. Commander Chen visited occasionally, her official reason being to check on his recovery for mission logs. But Liam recognized her personal concern beneath the professional exterior. "The corporation is asking questions," she told him during one such visit, sitting awkwardly in the Proxian dwelling that responded subtly to her unfamiliar presence. "About your extended stay here, about what exactly happened in that chamber." "What have you told them?" Liam asked, removing the neural interface he'd been practicing with. "The truth," Chen said simply, "that you and Kevnar established some kind of neural connection that saved your life, and you're working with the Proxians to understand it, that it may have significant implications for future human-Proxian cooperation?" Liam nodded gratefully. "And they're accepting that?" "For now," Chen's expression turned serious, "but eventually they'll want more. Technical details, potential applications. You know how corporations think. If they can't monetize it or weaponize it, they lose interest." "This isn't about technology," Liam said firmly. "It's about connection, understanding, continuation." Chen studied him with the careful assessment that had made her an effective commander. "You've changed, Taylor. And I don't just mean the leg." He couldn't deny it. The neural work with the archivist was transforming him in subtle but profound ways. His perception had altered. Colors seemed deeper, sounds more layered. He found himself responding to environmental cues humans typically missed. Sometimes words came to him in Proxian rather than English, especially when describing emotions or abstract concepts. "I'm still me," he assured her, "just expanded." "And Kevnar? Her consciousness, is it separate within you, like a passenger?" Liam shook his head, struggling to explain something human language wasn't designed to express. "It's not like having another person in my head. It's more like having access to her perspectives, her memories, her ways of understanding reality." "And her feelings?" Chen asked carefully. "About you?" The question struck close to what Liam was still reconciling within himself. "Yes," he admitted quietly. "Those two." The most challenging aspect of the integration wasn't accessing Nara's transmitted patterns. It was confronting what they contained. The depth of what she had felt for him, recognized long before he had understood his own feelings. The profound connection she had seen possible between them, transcending species and cultural differences. "You're not coming back to the refinery, are you?" Chen asked, though it wasn't really a question. "I don't know yet," Liam answered honestly. "I need to complete this first, to fulfill what she entrusted to me." Chen nodded, accepting this as she rose to leave. "For what it's worth, Taylor, I think she chose well, not just in saving you, but in what she gave you afterward." After she departed, Liam returned to his practice with the neural interface. The archivist had created exercises to help him differentiate between his natural thought patterns and the integrated Proxian ones. A necessary step before attempting to fully access the complete transmitted message. He closed his eyes, focusing on a particular memory sequence that had been tantalizingly incomplete during previous sessions. Nara's first impression of him during their initial meeting at the refinery 6 months earlier. The memory unfolded, no longer fragmented but flowing smoothly through his consciousness. Not as if he were watching it, but experiencing it through her perception. The strange dissonance of seeing himself through her eyes. The surprise she had felt at his direct gaze. Something Proxians typically avoided in formal settings. The instant, unexpected resonance she had detected between their energy patterns. what humans might call chemistry, but Proxians understood as something deeper. Neural compatibility at a fundamental level. Rare even between Proxians, nearly unheard of across species. I knew then her encoded thoughts conveyed. I recognized the possibility between us, though I could not speak of it according to our customs. Could only wait and observe whether you would recognize it too. And on the walkway above the fuel tanks, when he had called her beautiful, he had recognized it without understanding the significance, seen her truly, in a way that transcended physical appearance. Her reaction had not been offense, but shock that he would speak such recognition aloud without understanding its binding nature in her culture. The misunderstanding that had created distance between them, only for crisis to bring them together in the most profound way possible. Liam emerged from the memory sequence with tears tracking down his face, tears of grief and wonder intermingled. Elder Viresh, who had been monitoring the session, touched his shoulder gently. "You have made remarkable progress," she said. "Your mind adapts in ways we did not anticipate. Perhaps that is why Kevnar believes synchronization possible between you." "When can I access the complete transmission?" Liam asked. "I've only experienced fragments so far." "Soon," Viresh promised, "but complete integration requires careful preparation. The full transmission contains not just memories and perspectives, but core consciousness patterns, what makes a Proxian identity unique. Too rapid exposure could overwhelm your human neural structure." "I've been patient," Liam pointed out. "It's been almost a month. And it is precisely your patience that proves you are nearly ready." The elder adjusted something on his interface. "Tomorrow we will attempt full access. Today, rest and prepare yourself." Left alone, Liam moved outside his dwelling to sit beneath the alien sky as evening approached. Proxima B's unique rotation meant that dusk lingered for hours, painting the horizon in shades of amber, in deep purple. The settlement around him pulsed with the quiet evening activities of its inhabitants, so different from the constant mechanized hum of the human sector. In this between time, neither fully day nor night, Liam found himself reflecting on all that had changed. His perception of reality, his understanding of connection, his definition of continuation. Nara had given him not just her memories, but her way of experiencing existence. And through that gift, he was becoming something neither fully human nor Proxian, but a bridge between. A continuation not just of her, but of possibility. Tomorrow he would finally access the complete transmission, the full extent of what she had encoded in those desperate final moments. Whatever it contained, whatever it asked of him, he would honor it, honor her. Not because he owed her his life, though he did. Not because he had come to love her in a way that transcended conventional understanding, though that was also true. But because in that moment of perfect synchronization, they had recognized each other completely, and such recognition, once experienced, could never be undone. The chamber of resonance within the Hall of Patterns was typically reserved for the most sacred Proxian neural ceremonies, transitions, bondings, final pattern preservations. No human had ever been permitted inside until today. Liam sat at the chamber's center, surrounded by a circle of neural archivists, including Elder Viresh. The specialized interface he wore was the most elaborate yet, a full crown of delicate filaments that connected to precise points across his scalp, face, and neck. It was uncomfortable, bordering on painful, but he welcomed the discomfort as the price of what was to come. "The complete transmission will unfold in phases," Viresh explained, her voice resonating strangely in the crystalline chamber. "Do not attempt to rush the process. Allow each pattern to fully integrate before proceeding to the next." "I understand," Liam said, his heart pounding with anticipation and something like fear. "We will monitor your neural pathways throughout," another archivist added. "If the integration becomes dangerous, we will intervene." "And if I get lost in her patterns?" Liam asked the question that had haunted him through nights of preparation. "If I can't find my way back to myself?" A ripple of communication passed among the archivists, not spoken but felt as a subtle vibration in the air. Viresh answered for them all. Kevnar did not intend absorption, but continuation. Trust in her design. Trust in what she saw between you. Liam nodded, centering himself as they had taught him, finding the quiet space within his consciousness where integration was possible. "We begin," Viresh intoned. The interface activated. Liam felt the familiar, cool tingle as it aligned with his neural pathways, then the deeper resonance as it connected to the Proxian systems throughout the chamber. For a moment, disorientation washed over him, his human brain struggling to process sensory input it was never designed to receive. Then clarity as the preliminary patterns established themselves. The framework Nara had constructed to make communication possible between their different neural architectures. The bridge between species, between ways of being. I am here, her encoded presence seemed to whisper, though it wasn't truly speech. Follow the patterns. Liam surrendered to the flow, allowing the first phase to unfold through him. Memories cascaded, Nara's earliest consciousness, her development, her training, the experiences that had shaped her understanding of existence, her selection as an envoy to humans, the careful study of Earth cultures and languages, her arrival at the colony, the initial disorientation and gradual adaptation, then meeting him, working alongside him, the growing recognition that transcended professional collaboration. The memories gave way to deeper patterns, her core values, beliefs, emotional responses, not transferred as concepts but as neural frameworks, compatible with his human consciousness, yet distinctly Proxian in nature. The integration was not replacement but expansion, his mind reconfiguring to accommodate perspectives it had never before contained. Time lost meaning in the chamber. Liam existed simultaneously in multiple states, his human self, observing and integrating, the remnants of Nara's consciousness flowing through and around his own, and something new emerging from their union, neither fully one nor the other. The final phase began without warning, a sudden deepening of the connection that took his breath away. This was what Nara had encoded in her last moments, the culmination of her gift, not just memories or values or perspectives, but purpose, vision, possibility, images unfolded, humans and Proxians working together not in parallel, but in true integration. Neural interfaces redesigned to accommodate human physiology, communication that transcended language barriers, understanding that bridged biological differences, a future where what happened between him and Nara was not unique but the beginning of a new kind of connection. This is what I saw possible, her patterns conveyed. What we can begin, if you choose. Not obligation, opportunity. And with that understanding came the most profound gift of all, release. Freedom to determine what to do with what she had given him. The continuation was his to define, not dictated, but offered. A beginning, not an ending. The integration completed with gentle finality. The neural interface deactivated, filaments retracting from his skin. Liam opened his eyes to find the archivist watching him with something like awe. "It is done," Varesh said softly. "The integration is complete." Liam took a breath that felt like his first in a new existence. "Yes," he agreed, and it was his voice that spoke, but with harmonics it had never carried before. His consciousness that looked out through his eyes but with perception forever altered. "What did you experience?" one of the younger archivists asked, scientific curiosity overcoming ceremonial restraint. Liam considered the question, searching for words in either human or Proxian language that could adequately express what had transpired, found none that fully captured it. "Continuation," he said finally, "not of one consciousness or the other, but of possibility, of connection that transcends separation." Viresh nodded, understanding beyond the inadequate words. "And what will you do with this gift, Liam Taylor? How will you honor Kevnar's final choice?" The question wasn't unexpected, but its answer had become clear only in the final moments of integration. Liam rose from the chamber's center, feeling oddly balanced despite the residual discomfort of the interface's removal. "I'll continue what she began," he said with quiet certainty. "Not just her work at the refinery, but her greater purpose as an envoy between our peoples, building understanding between humans and Proxians, creating frameworks for neural connection that accommodate our differences." One of the archivists made a gesture of skepticism. "The humans may not welcome such efforts. They value independence, separation of consciousness. They value connection too," Liam countered. "We just express it differently, define it differently. The potential exists on both sides. It just needs translation." Translation. The word felt inadequate for what he now envisioned. Not just converting concepts between languages, but creating a new framework for mutual comprehension. A bridge constructed from both sides, meeting in the middle. "You would become a bridge mind," Varesh observed, "neither fully human nor Proxian, but capable of understanding both. It is unprecedented." "So was neural synchronization between our species," Liam pointed out, "until it wasn't." The archivists exchanged that silent communication again, coming to some consensus he could now partially sense, but not fully access. Varesh spoke for them all. The neural archivist will support this continuation, she declared, in honor of Kevnar's choice and recognition of its potential meaning for both our peoples. Liam bowed slightly, acknowledging their acceptance. Thank you. The formalities concluded, the other archivists withdrew, leaving only Varesh with Liam in the chamber. The elder studied him with those ancient golden eyes, seeing perhaps more clearly than anyone else the transformation that had occurred. You carry her well, she said simply. Not just her, Liam corrected gently. What we recognized in each other. What could be possible between all of us? Viresh's expression softened. You know, Kevnar came to me the day before the accident. She spoke of a human who had used our sacred word for beauty without understanding its meaning, who had looked at her with recognition but spoken with ignorance. I didn't know, Liam said, the familiar phrase now carrying new weight. No, Varesh agreed, but she believed you could learn, that the misunderstanding revealed potential rather than limitation. A smile touched her aged features. It seems she was correct. Liam felt the echo of Nara's presence within him, not a separate consciousness, but an integrated perspective, a way of understanding that had become part of him. Not replacement, but expansion. Not loss, but continuation. He would return to the human settlement tomorrow, begin the work of explaining what had happened, what was possible. They wouldn't understand immediately. How could they? But understanding would come. Connection would follow. Bridges would be built. For now, he stood in the chamber of resonance, simultaneously alone and more connected than he had ever been, carrying within him not just the echo of one who had saved him, but the possibility of transformation for both their peoples. You're beautiful, you know that? He whispered in Proxian, the words carrying their full cultural weight of recognition, commitment, continuation. And somewhere in the patterns that now resided within him, integrated with his own consciousness, he felt Nara's response. Not words, not separate thought, but resonance, acknowledgement, completion of what had begun with misunderstanding on a walkway above fuel tanks. The circle closed. The continuation began, in the lingering dusk of Proxima B, with its amber light filtering through crystal walls. Liam Taylor stood at the threshold of something entirely new. Not human, not Proxian, but bridge, translator, continuation. His path forward would not be easy. Prejudice, skepticism, and institutional resistance waited on both sides, but he carried within him the proof that connection was possible, that understanding could transcend even the most fundamental differences, that beauty, once truly recognized, could never be undone.